Bitcoin, declining again in the last 24 hours under pressure, but it's not actually the underperformer, right?
Yeah, very interesting here. We have altcoins that have really dropped a lot more, now looking at a 7-day decline of more than 20% for stablecoins and altcoins such as Cardano, Terra Luna, as we know that these companies are already kind of buying each other's reserves. When you look at Terra Luna, for example, buying not just Bitcoin, but also Avalanche, which is down more than 20% on the 7-day period here, Caroline. So you're looking at correlations. While some are dropping more than others, it's important to recognize now how much this entire community is related to each other. So if you're buying Bitcoin, what happens to the Terra price? If you're buying Avalanche, what happens to the Terra price? What else is Bitcoin related to? I think is very interesting. You're seeing this intensifying correlation with the NASDAQ 100. If you take a look at this chart, it's greater than really it's ever been. So NASDAQ sells off, so does Bitcoin.
How important is that to market participants? Because many every now and then sort of send out hopeful tweets saying, look, the correlation's pulling back a little bit, but do they want to see it dislocate somewhat from the NASDAQ? I guess it means that it's deemed a risk asset.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a hedge fund manager who is typically invested in a lot of other hedge funds and asked if this is now a diversifier. And he said he was able to hold stable or generally stable because he had Bitcoin rather than a lot of other risk assets. So to your point, there's some traditional money managers that do take a look at this and say, okay, we still want a diversifying asset here. But most people who are still Bitcoin believers and buying Bitcoin don't look at the volatility here. And again, we are down below $40,000 again on Bitcoin, right? So we're back to asking, what is that floor? They're still looking to what that 300,000 or 500,000 per Bitcoin price target looks like over the next 5 years. The question is, if this year is a dud, then how quickly do we get to 500,000?
And indeed, what it means for the nascent interest coming from institutional clients, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because what is it correlated to? They are still going to have that question. We are getting more answers, and there are definitely quants out there that are doing the math on this, because even beyond NASDAQ, you and I had spoken to somebody a little earlier, making that correlation with the dollar. If the dollar weakens, that gives you a case for Bitcoin as an alternative currency, doesn't it? Or if inflation rises, that's another correlation that used to be there now that is breaking down more dramatically. So again, early days of an asset class, a fun Wall Street strategist thing to do to figure out what it is really related to.
And geographical demand, do we have any breakdown on that of late?
That's an interesting question, especially because Terra has been such a big buyer. There's a lot of questions about what it means to have one buyer being such a big base here to the asset. But yeah, beyond that, unclear as to how much more after Bitcoin 2022 and Salt Bahamas coming up around the corner, how much interest is being drummed up among new investors around the world.